Welcome to the Florida Divorce Podcast, your source for the information you need to successfully get through your divorce and into the next exciting chapter of life. Now, here's your host, Attorney Scott Kalish.
Hey everyone, my name is Attorney Scott Kalish, and I practice law here in South Florida. I practice mainly family law and divorce. Today I want to talk to you guys about, alimony, and I want to specifically cover the length of alimony and how long alimony can be potentially paid for, okay? So that's a really, really important question. It's something that I get all of the time. Everyone wants to know, hey, how long do you think I can get alimony for, right? So if you're new to the podcast, definitely take a look at, I think it's my first episode where I go through how alimony becomes, on the table, right? Like when it's going to be available in a case in general, right? So if you don't know anything about alimony, definitely listen to that episode first. Or you can listen to this episode and then go back to the other episode to really, get a sense of whether or not alimony can even be something that's ordered in your case. So this episode is really going to talk about the length of the award rather than whether or not it becomes available. Right. So the first question has to be answered as to whether or not it's actually going to be ordered. But if it's going to be ordered, this episode is going to talk about that, right? Sort of the second half of the equation. How long is it going to be ordered for? So let's kind of jump right into it. And the first sort of part of the analysis, right, of the question is what type of marriage you're in. And what I mean by that is how long have you been married? Because in Florida, we have three types of marriages. We have what's called a short-term marriage, and that's a marriage that lasts anything more than a day to 7 years. Then we have a moderate-term marriage, which is a marriage that lasts between 7 and 17 years. And then we have a long-term marriage, and a long-term marriage is defined as any marriage that lasts longer than 17 plus years. Now, depending upon where you fall in terms of the length of your marriage will sort of dictate what type of alimony is going to best fit your case and what type of alimony is going to be available to you potentially, right? So let's get into the types of alimony, knowing the types of marriages that we just went through. The first type of alimony I want to discuss with you is something called bridge the gap alimony, right? And what bridge the gap alimony is basically it's a type of alimony that's awarded in a case where it's usually a short-term marriage. To be honest with you, that's probably the most common sort of factual scenario it arises in is a short-term marriage. And it's basically when there's an ascertainable event, right? When there's an event in the future that we know is going to occur and the person needing alimony just needs alimony for a period of time just to arrive at that event, right? They're in a position now where they can't support themselves fully and they need alimony for a certain period of time to get them to this next event. And you might be thinking, well, what do you mean by this next event? Well, maybe they need alimony for a period of time to basically maybe go back on the job in an interview circuit, right? To get back networking or something and having enough time to land that job that is going to be able to support themselves, right? Or maybe they need, alimony for a certain period of time because they need to get back into into the workforce, save up some money. And then once they save up some money, now they're going to be able to, afford a down payment for a house or have enough for rent, something like that, right? So basically there's, everyone has a different situation. So basically it's alimony, bridge the gap alimony is basically alimony for a certain period of time until they arrive at this, event in their lives where alimony is no longer appropriate. The next type of alimony I want to talk about is something called rehabilitative alimony. And that's basically when a spouse needs to go back to school, maybe to get training or maybe to learn a new skill, maybe to get a license or just graduate with a degree, so that they can be qualified to get a job, they're going to be able to earn an income with that new job to support themselves, right? So that's rehabilitative alimony. Something really key to keep in mind is that there's got to be a defined plan, which means you can't just say, hey, I want to go back to school for something. I don't know yet, but I want to go back to school. That's probably not going to work. The court needs a defined plan to order as part of rehabilitative alimony. That's most likely because the court can terminate alimony, rehabilitative alimony, if you stray away from the plan. So for example, if you decide, hey, I've always wanted to go to law school, I have an undergraduate degree, and law school is 3 years. So my plan is to go to law school for 3 years. And then when I graduate, I'll have be able to be a lawyer and be able to support myself, right? So that's definitely an option. But if you go to law school and you decide halfway through that, hey, you know what, this isn't for me, I want to go and start my own business, right? The court can technically terminate your alimony award because you strayed away from the plan and you didn't follow it. So that's the key restriction with rehabilitative alimony. The next type of alimony is something called durational alimony. And this is really, a catch-all type of alimony. And basically when other types of alimony are not appropriate, like short-term, bridge the gap alimony is not, available or not appropriate, or rehabilitative alimony is not appropriate, or as we'll discuss shortly, maybe permanent alimony isn't appropriate, then a court can award durational alimony. It's just like a catch-all type of alimony that we have when the court finds that, hey, there's a need and the other party has an ability to pay, then the court can award durational alimony. It's basically the most general form of alimony we have. It's probably one of the most common types of alimony when we're not talking about a permanent alimony award. The key restriction or limitation here is that the court cannot order durational alimony longer than the term of marriage itself. So that's going to really be a guide for you to determine whether or not, or for how long, alimony might be available, right? So if permanent alimony is not available, then I would say the longest you're going to get is the length of your marriage, because that's the longest durational alimony can be. The next type of alimony, right, is probably the most feared type of alimony out there for people that would be paying alimony, is permanent alimony, right? And this is something that's most common to long-term marriages, right? Because there's what's called a presumption for permanent alimony when the marriage lasts longer than 17 years, which is, a long-term marriage in Florida. So again, let me say that again so it's very clear. If you're in a long-term marriage, which is 17 years or over, permanent alimony is presumed the correct type of alimony, or presumed to be what the court is going to order, unless the person that would be paying can argue otherwise, right? They have to rebut that presumption. Now, there's a lot of, there's a misnomer out there. A lot of people think this is that if you're in a moderate term marriage, that permanent alimony is, off the table. That's not technically true. If you're in a moderate term marriage, a marriage between 7 and 17 years, the court can award permanent alimony, but just there is no presumption for it, right? So it's available to argue for it, and there's an argument, against it, right? So moderate term marriage, it's available, but there just is no presumption. Now, the opposite is true with a short term marriage, a marriage lasting shorter than 7 years. You can get permanent alimony, but it's extremely rare, right? And it's only in the most unusual, extreme sort of circumstance that a court will order permanent alimony in a short-term marriage. There's actually a presumption against awarding permanent alimony unless the person asking for it can, make an argument. Now, very, very unusual, very extreme. There's got to be a lot of facts and a lot of reason, or many reasons, maybe not many reasons, that's probably, a mischaracterization of the law, but there's got to be a good reason for ordering permanent alimony in a short-term marriage. Now, those are the types of alimony awards that are out there. Really, if you're in a durational, if you're in a marriage where durational alimony is going to be something that fits the best, then, your guide is, well, it can't be longer than the marriage itself. And then if you're in a marriage that lasts longer than 17 years, then you're looking at permanent, if alimony is going to be awarded. So that's just something for you guys to keep in mind. And I'm sure this episode has given you guys sort of a guide when thinking about how long alimony can be for, right? So again, if this is all new to you, definitely listen to the first episode that I did, with this podcast that talks about, what is alimony, and kind of giving you, an idea of like when alimony can even be awarded, period. Before you can get $1 of alimony, there's got to be things that are proven by the person asking for the alimony before the court can even award $1 of alimony. So just keep that in mind. All right. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Really appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. I'm hoping that, you're finding value to it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is scott@kjlawfla.com. Again, scott@kjlawfla.com. Have a great day, guys. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Florida Divorce Podcast. To learn the 10 secrets behind every successful divorce, visit floridadivorcepodcast.com. If you'd like Scott's help in your divorce case, go to kjlawfla.com.